Hey, you shiny plastic people, I am the fantastic Chris Plastic. And we have reached the penultimate episode of Ahsoka and Talking Tano. This week, Hera has some splainin to do. Ahsoka finally arrives to some explosive results. Sabine and Ezra catch up a little bit. Shin and Balin go their own ways, and Thrawn continues to pull the strings from behind. All that and more as we discuss this week with Jessi. Let's talk some Tano. Hey you guys, I am so happy to be joined by none other than this way is Jessi. Jessi, thank you so much for joining me again.
Absolutely, I'm happy to be here.
So we're not at home, clearly. We're on the road, so we're pre-recording this. We're not live. But that still doesn't mean that we will not have some spoilers. If I keep this face, maybe people will be entertained. Jessi, are you excited to talk this near final episode of Ahsoka?
Yes, almost as excited as I am to watch the finale next week.
You know, I have to say, I didn't want this episode to end.
No, I was like, in some ways, I'm excited every week to watch it, but I almost felt like I should save it all and watch it all in one snowy weekend. But it's been quite the journey, and I'm excited to see where it goes after this.
Well, and I feel like this is going to be infinitely rewatchable.
For sure, definitely.
You know,
especially because I feel like we're gonna get a season 2.
It seems like a really hard time that they're going to wrap this up in one more episode.
I don't think that they can finish the story, being as what we saw this week.
Yeah. So much happened.
Yeah, and yet there's still so much left to wrap it up in a nice little bow. So I think we'll get some closure next week, and I have my fingers crossed for a season 2, which means a couple weeks before season 2 starts, I know you and I will sit down and watch all of these episodes again.
And I'm sure that won't be our first rewatch either.
Doubtful.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the episode. We start, of course, with Hera in front of a tribunal of senators from the New Republic, having to explain why she didn't follow orders.
Yes. We meet an old friend here who comes to kind of bail her out.
Oh, definitely. And, that old friend, it's not Star Wars without him. It's C-3PO, of course.
Yes, I think that we both, as soon as he came through the door, we both looked at each other and said, 3PO?
Right. Of course it's 3PO. It has to be 3PO.
Yeah, so he's there on behalf of Leia Organa to state that Leia authorized the mission.
Right, and I think he commented that she's like the head of the defense council or something, so
yeah.
She has the ultimate authority there.
Yeah,
so.
He's there to name drop.
Right.
In order to bail Hera out. So do we think that Leia actually authorized this mission?
Oh, no.
No, even before we get some confirmation later in the episode, we know that there's something else going on behind the scenes there.
Right, well, and we even know prior to that, when they were on the planet Cetos, Carson, I think, mentioned Senator Organa can only buy them so much time.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
even at that time, we, I think, knew that she didn't really authorize it.
No, but we're going to lean on her name a little bit to try to get out of some trouble now.
Right. Well, and fans love callbacks.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Love a wink.
Wouldn't be Star Wars without all of it being somehow connected.
One of the best things and one of the worst things about Star Wars, I think, is that it's such a small galaxy.
Yet so large.
Yeah, but yet everybody knows everybody. It's okay.
Yeah. It's like growing up where we live.
Right. But it's organic for Leia to know Hera.
Oh, yeah, it does make sense.
Not only did they meet in the Clone Wars... Well, no. I don't know if they did. I know...
Didn't they watch in Rebels Hera and Ezra together? A hologram of Leia giving a speech?
I don't think
Am I making that up?
No, you're thinking of Senator Travis, who was secretly an asset for the Empire. But
Okay.
but Leia did help them get ships to steal.
True.
But
yes.
I don't think Hera was specifically part of that mission.
Okay.
But, governmentally, they would know each other, being that Hera is, a high-ranking general in the New Republic.
Dave Filoni sees this episode and likes my rewrite and it becomes canon?
There you go. Why not?
You never know.
You never know. Of course, droids were insulted, and Carson had to hold back Chopper.
I love a little bit of Chopper attitude, and while he was not a big part of this episode, I did laugh out loud here.
Any bit of Chopper we get is something I think we need.
Yeah, and I think you know this, but Chopper's my favorite character from Rebels.
Right. Well, I think he's a lot of people's favorite character from Rebels.
I love his snark.
There are many droids in Star Wars, but I think there are a few as just homicidal and murderous.
Yeah, he's really my favorite war criminal.
True that.
Yes.
True that. So Ahsoka does a little bit more training before they get to the planet.
Yeah, I found this scene was pretty interesting to me, with the Anakin hologram as her instructor, and then just thinking about it while watching her, I figured she's probably been using these little training sessions throughout the last decade, where we kind of don't really know exactly what everybody's been doing in order to keep her skills sharp. Not unlike what many of us did during pandemic times, turning to YouTube for workouts and such. But I did, she knows the story of Anakin now. She knows Anakin to Vader. But I think that her recent visit to the World Between Worlds let her know it's still okay to think about Anakin as Anakin.
Well, and I kind of wonder if actually after, in Rebels, their confrontation, if she didn't revisit these holograms for
Absolutely,
a while.
Yeah.
Just like, I can't listen to this man. She couldn't say he was a good master, but maybe now she can after that moment in the World Between Worlds.
Yeah, I think it kind of, sometimes we find out that our heroes are not great people, and I can think about that in just our real world, that happening, but being able to rectify that the person that they knew before they did some terrible things was still a big part of them, and I think that's what she's feeling here, and I like to see it.
Right. People are complicated, and I think sometimes in media we don't see that enough.
Right. People are complicated, and so are Jedis.
Absolutely, even the Jedi.
Yeah, but I think that was kind of a little bit heartwarming for me after last week.
Right, and I'm sure Lucasfilm said, we built the Clone Wars costume for Aiden. We got to get the most of that budget,
Well, and even if you think back to the end of Jedi, there was a redemption there.
Right.
And this is taking place after Jedi, therefore the redeemed Anakin as a Force ghost, or looking back through these training holograms, I think still has a place.
Sure, absolutely. Of course, they pop out of hyperspace, out of the whales, and are immediately introduced to a minefield.
Yeah, not good.
Not good. Of course, Hugh Yang's like, it's okay, the whales are taking most of the damage. And then they jumped.
Yeah. Yes. But, they took some shots here and there, but they made it through.
They did. They ducked into the graveyard.
Yep.
Which is, a bad place to be unless I think you were trained by one of the greatest Clone War pilots and you happen to be a Jedi.
Right. Use the Force to avoid the big obstacles.
Right. It's maybe cheating a little bit when you're that good.
Is it if you're a Jedi, though?
No. Of course, Thrawn sees this from far away and strategizes. Not only is she good, but we need to try to aim her where we want her to be.
Yeah, use her skills against her without her knowing. Kind of, he turns her into a pawn.
Right, and that's a thing I think Thrawn is really good at.
Yeah, and I grew up with, big looming Vader coming in and being scary and loud and being in the center of attention as soon as he walks in the room. And Thrawn is, to me, almost scarier. Still waters run deep. He is playing that long game. He is in his head and taking everything in. as he strategizes what that next move is.
Oh, absolutely. And of course he gets a little help in figuring out where she is from the Great Mothers.
Yes. I forget about them, and then they pop up and do something like this.
And they are so spooky. Just a moment to just say.
Yeah, the close-ups on the faces were pretty eerie. As we get into October next week, I don't know how many of these costumes we'll see, but it would be a pretty spooky one.
Right. Well, and it's funny because it's right out of the Clone Wars, which I know you didn't see. But we did get a little bit of in Rebels with them as spooky ghosts.
Yeah.
But it's something about it in three-dimensional flesh is just worse.
Yeah, it's quite creepy. And it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Now, of course, Balin and Shin locate Ezra and Sabine as they're trolling along with their nomads in the slowest speeders.
Yes.
I swear they could have gotten out and walked faster.
Yes.
But it's okay. Upon attack, Ezra circles the wagons. We go western here.
Yeah, our space western has hit the ground.
Yeah.
And it absolutely, this becomes a western. I think you mentioned it. It was kind of like the old movies, Cowboys and Indians.
Right.
Which was entertaining, definitely. Sabine and Ezra are trying to kind of have a heart-to-heart. Ezra's fishing a little bit for some information. They're just kind of catching up, yet here they are under attack.
Right. And we also had a really cool scene. I didn't have the picture here because it's not visually interesting, but it was very cool to watch, where Ahsoka uses the Force to connect to Sabine to locate her, proving their bond is that tight.
Yeah, and I think that Sabine was a little bit surprised. Well, they're just toting along on their in their little wagon train, and you hear Ahsoka's voice, and it takes a couple times, and you kind of see it come across Sabine's face.
Well, in Sabine's defense, she thought Ahsoka was dead.
Yes. Yeah, so this was probably surprising. She may still think that she's dead until she arrives. I'm not sure.
Right. Well, and of course, who knows how hip to Sabine some of those further wackier Jedi abilities are. I don't know how key she is to knowing that Force ghosts are a thing and those kinds of things.
Yeah, we're still kind of in the dark about that, and I think she might be as well.
Right. And of course, Ahsoka flies in and thinks, I might as well jump.
Yes. I was a little bit worried she put her white shawl back on and then rolled around in the dirt, but she seemed to come out unscathed.
It didn't get dirty. That must be another Force ability.
It's a Jedi ability, yes.
Yeah. Well, of course, it's against Jedi regulation to land.
Yeah, Hu Yang tells us that.
Ahsoka's got no business with that. No time. In the battle, of course, Sabine offers Ezra back his lightsaber. And he's like, nah, I've got the Force.
No, and he uses the Force quite a bit here.
Yeah.
It's a pretty entertaining and fun battle to watch as Sabine's running around and shooting and using a little bit of Force, but Ezra's really just Force pushing and using really the soldiers against each other.
Oh, absolutely. It's just kind of funny to think about, just him just shoving people to the side. Yeah. And it's funny that we don't see more of that from Jedi. I
feel like in the most recent material, we really have seen a lot more of that. Everybody's using the Force to stop things, push things around. We do see him stop a lightsaber with the Force, which was a very interesting scene. I believe that, when we watched it together live, you see the lightsaber bend around his Force.
Oh, yeah, when he's pushing against it and you see it bend and curl. Oh, that was
to
really
me, that
cool.
tells us that while Ezra's been gone for a decade or so, he's still very powerful as a Jedi.
Right.
He seems to be kind of going a little bit on, I'm choosing peace. He declines the lightsaber, and I'm sure that I was like, oh, they're going to give him the lightsaber back and he's going to do some damage, but no, he uses just himself. He does pick up a couple blaster from the stormtroopers who, as he's taking them down and shoots them, but really he's under that all we see his power is still there.
Right. And it feeds into what previous guest Brick Something has said and will continue to say, toss that saber.
Yeah.
How do we win? By not fighting. And sure, he fights, but it's defensive. the entire time he's fighting defensive until he picks up a blaster when necessary.
Yeah. But I think that even though when he picks up the blaster and fires it, while that could be an offense, it's in defense of him and his allies. What are those tiny creatures called?
I have no idea.
No, but they're his friends. They become his family.
Right.
And so he's all about protecting them as well. And I think that's really that pulling the blaster and shooting more stormtroopers is defensive.
And of course, Baylan and Ahsoka have their rematch.
Yeah, and they still seem pretty evenly matched. I talked about it last time I was on. I don't know a lot about Ahsoka. My experience comes from speaking with you as well as watching Rebels, and so I was always like, to me she was this mythical kind of awesome, incredible, super powerful Jedi, and I think that she is, but it's instead of just her coming in and cleaning up all the time, I like to see a good even fight where there's a little bit of that struggle. It kind of pulls at my heartstrings and pulls me to the edge of my seat, and I'm waiting to see hopefully she comes out on top this time. Seeing her really lose that last battle and go to the world between worlds was interesting, but I was like, man, this guy's pretty powerful too.
Right. And it's funny, earlier Baylan and Shin have a moment where he advises her like impatience is a way to lose a battle.
Yes.
And it seemed like early on Ahsoka was being impatient.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she had a bigger plan.
Yeah, I think a lot of her body language, some of her facial expressions as she showed up to this battle shows that she's now being a little bit more patient.
Right, and the other thing, you talk about her, through our conversations, the expectations she's a super awesome Jedi. I think her actual strength, her superpower, is her ability to connect people.
Okay.
And I think that's fully in play in this series.
Yeah. Well, and we see a little bit of that struggle, not to jump to previous episodes, but with her and Sabine trying to connect again,
right.
As Master and in Padawan. But we see, I think last week we saw her kind of come around a little bit. And I believe coming up here we're going to see some smiles and a little bit of kind of the gang back together.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, the troopers are dispatched by Thrawn, which we already know are a very limited resource for him.
Yeah, I mean, they're covered in red duct tape. They're just kind of pieced together already, so the more he loses, the weaker he becomes as, just an entity. So he does pull them out, and I think everybody's confused for a moment.
Oh, absolutely. We see here, not in the shot here, but Hu Yang launching missiles at Baylan to give Ahsoka the ability to escape.
Yes.
Again, playing the long game, she's not here to beat him. That's not her goal. Her goal is to get to Sabine and Ezra.
Yeah, and really when you think about it, you don't win a long battle, a war, let's say, in that first battle. There were many, many steps to get there, and I think we're seeing that through this series as well.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I think we lost the scene. There we are. We see Sabine and Ezra surrounded by our space tape troopers.
Yep.
But of course, Ahsoka shows up to help them out, even the odds.
Oh, yeah.
And I love this scene of the determination on her face as Sabine and Ezra are maybe a little bit surprised to see her in this exact moment.
Yeah, specifically in this scene, Ezra looks bewildered.
Right. But even to him, even though he worked a little bit with Ahsoka in Rebels, I think even then she's still a little mythical to him.
Oh, for sure.
Whoa, Ahsoka? Really?
Yeah.
Thrawn, of course, sees the numbers dwindle from this battle. The board lights red, and he says, the Jedi of old.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulls those troopers, and he says it's acceptable to lose these numbers, this finite resource he has, because, of course, they've been loading the ship this whole time.
Yeah, and we didn't realize that either as viewers.
Yeah, he's a smart cookie.
Yeah, he's almost using these battles that he loses to study his opponents, and I'm guessing he is strategizing what's going to happen next, what steps he'll take next in order to beat them.
Right, and you know, early on he talks about knowing that her master was Anakin, that
Yes.
she's going to be reckless and a little bit flyby and hard to predict, but I think even he is still impressed by what he sees here.
Yes.
And he's still cold. He's so cold.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's scary because of that, because you can't really, he doesn't come out and just show you his hands.
Right, as terrifying as Vader in Rogue One is, going down that corridor where people are just flying and screaming and dying, this is almost as terrifying.
Yeah, just in a different way.
Yeah. Ahsoka offers Shin help, which is an interesting thing, and maybe it's because she thinks of her own master and his tribulations.
Yeah, and she's fresh from really meeting with him in the World Between Worlds, and so feeling like, you know, she can pull people back, or at least offer them the opportunity to turn away from the dark side.
Now, of course, she declines and jumps in the troop carrier.
Yeah. Were we surprised by that?
No.
I wasn't either.
But, you know, it was still interesting to see Ahsoka literally reach her hand out.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I didn't expect it. I thought that they would either battle or she would retreat with the troops like that she ended up doing. But right there in the middle with that offer, I didn't expect it at all.
Definitely agree. And, of course, the reunion. Look at the smiles.
Everybody's happy.
Right? Again, gone is the cold Ahsoka from early. And we see the Ahsoka we know and love, the very warm character.
Yeah, this was a good ending for these guys, at least for this episode, because you can see kind of that trust. We feel good about the three of them being together as we move into the next stage, especially with them being happy and ready to go. Even Ezra says, I think I might be going home after all.
Oh yeah, the ship is dropping down, Hu
Yeah.
Yang's there, and he's like, sorry, shell buddies.
Yeah.
I got places to be. And it kind of feels like at this point he'd maybe given up a little bit.
Yeah, you know, I think that he, other than having to pick up and move with his new family once in a while, as threats appeared, he seemed to just be living and living the best that he could there, and was content. Content enough anyway. He had no idea what was going on in other galaxies, but his friends are here. He got a little taste of the old life with this battle, and I think he's kind of back in it now.
Absolutely. So Jess, that was this week's episode. Episode 7, just one more left. What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know. Again, I'm not as familiar with these characters, but I think I would predict that they're going to figure out their way home, and the battle may occur there. Obviously, Thrawn's leaving.
Right.
He's packing up, and he's a threat. He's a threat to the galaxy, and I think that our friends are going to follow him and hook back up with Hera and have this final battle of hopefully just season 1, and we'll see what happens next.
You know, the thing, I love focusing on the A plot, and that's what I think about most of the time, but then I remember once in a blue moon, and I'm not sure if you've thought about this, the B plot. What is Baylan doing?
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier when we were looking at his scenes, and that's a great question. What is he doing? He's given up. But
he thinks there's a higher power there that he's sorting out. He thinks something's drawing him. There's something on that planet for him.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Is that a spinoff?
Could be a spin-off. Of course, Ray Stevenson has passed away, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Dang it. Well, we'll see how it ends this season, and we may have a quick resolution, unfortunately, in season 2.
Right. I have this insane theory that I don't think is actually what's going to happen, because when I have insane theories, they bite me in the butt with Star Wars media. I've said it many times on the show that I think Ahsoka is the reincarnation of the daughter, or the embodiment of the daughter.
Yes.
What if somehow Baylan becomes the embodiment of the sun, of the dark side? The yang to, her yin,
He definitely could. I was also going to say, from what I have read of online kind of chatter about this series is, and you can see it just visually, the parallel with Viking lore.
Well, absolutely.
And I don't know enough about it. Is there something that parallels with that is obvious to those who are in the know that he's moving towards? That could be something, viewers, if you have an idea, I would say drop that in the comments. But yeah, I don't know how it's all going to play out, but I think it was intended to be big.
Sure. I don't think you're wrong, and that's got to be a part next week, right?
I think it's going to have to be, and you're right. Unfortunately, with the actor passing away, it may get kind of snubbed a little bit, and hopefully they honor him. He's been a great character so far. If they have to wrap that up at the beginning of, like I said, a hopeful season 2, and just kind of solidify his place in Star Wars lore.
Sure, and of course, there's always the rumor that, Mandalorian and Ahsoka and all that is feeding into an eventual, Disney Plus movie.
Yeah.
Maybe not actually on Disney Plus, but we'll just call it that because it's coming out of these Disney Plus series.
Sure, yeah.
And that could be the ultimate, all our favorite Disney Plus heroes team up to fight Thrawn.
Yeah, and I could see Filoni doing that for sure.
I would love to see that. Filoni, I don't know where he's at as a director because sometimes he seems cold and sometimes it seems like, haha, it was a trick, I'm great.
Yeah, but Ahsoka's his baby. He's got to be writing and at least, storyboarding kind of this long game with this character. Really, and I think Rosario Dawson's doing a great job, and from what I've seen, she's in it, for the long run too. So why not put together some great series, including a movie?
Absolutely. As you said, if you guys have thoughts or theories, comment below. I'm really bad at this part. So if you could, give this video a like. There should be there it is. Haha. If you don't like it, hit dislike. I don't love that. But it's interaction. We like interaction. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. If you like this kind of content, I mostly talk about toys, so I think we'll be getting back to that after Ahsoka wraps up. We'll see. Yeah. I don't know. But Jessi, thank you so much for joining me in the middle of our vacation.
Absolutely. It's a good thing for us to talk about. We've, I don't know, the viewers know we had a 3+ hour drive yesterday, and it was very hard for us to save any Ahsoka conversations for the recording of this. And we cheated a little bit, but we both were like, no, let's save it for us.
Yeah, I think we both went, not talking about Ahsoka, but...
But anyway, what'd you think?
Exactly.
So, yeah. No, it's been fun, so I appreciate you having me, and we'll see what happens next week.
Absolutely. So I will be joined by someone, maybe, next week. I don't have that booked. We'll see.
If you want to be here, comment.
Yeah.
I think it'd be kind of cool to bring everybody that's been a guest throughout this season together for a big panel. It could be chaotic, but that could be fun.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, enjoy your weekend, guys, and don't forget to let yourself shine.